Have you ever read a headline and just felt like you were missing the real story? Like there's a whole other language being spoken just beneath the surface of all the official statements and political moves? Well, you're not wrong. And today, we're going to give you the decoder ring. We're going to unpack the key terms that explain that huge gap between how things are supposed to work and how they actually do.
All right, so let's dive right into the main event here. We're talking about the tension between the world as it's written down in the law books and the world as it really, truly works every single day. And here it is, the master key to understanding this whole thing. On one side, you've got de jure. That means by law. It's the official story, the rule book. But on the other side, you have de facto, in fact, and that's our focus today. This is the reality on the ground, the way things really are, no matter what the rule book says.
So let's really lock in that definition. De facto isn't about what's written down. It's about what is. It's all those unwritten rules, the unofficial customs, the power structures that just exist in practice. You could say it's the ultimate reality check.
And believe me, this concept is absolutely everywhere once you start looking for it. Think about the US in the 50s and 60s. Even after segregation laws were overturned, de facto segregation was still a powerful reality in schools and neighborhoods. Or how about national languages? Countries like the US and the UK have no official language by law, but English is the de facto language, right? In politics, you get de facto leaders like Deng Xiaoping in China who held enormous power without any official top title. It even pops up in our personal lives. In Australia, for example, a long-term couple can be legally seen as a de facto relationship. It's universal.
Okay, so what happens when the official rules and the messy, on-the-ground reality just don't line up? How do people deal with that? Well, that brings us to the very clever tools we've come up with to manage these de facto situations.
The first tool in our kit is a modus vivendi. It literally translates to a way of living. Think of it as a pragmatic truce. It's not about actually solving the big disagreement. It's about finding a practical, temporary way for everyone to just, well, get on with things.
I love this quote because it's just so simple and so true. It's not a peace treaty, it's not a grand solution, it's just an accommodation, an arrangement so that life can go on. It's basically the diplomatic version of saying, look, let's just agree to disagree for now so we can move forward.
And here's a classic historical example for you. When Kuwait became independent way back when, Iraq immediately claimed the territory was theirs. Instead of getting stuck in a forever conflict, they reached a modus vivendi. Iraq officially recognized Kuwait, and that allowed relations to move forward, even if those deep-seated claims didn't just magically disappear. It was a practical fix for a very tense reality.
Now, another really common tool for managing reality is something you've probably heard of, the public-private partnership, or PPP. This is what happens when the government wants to get something big done, like build a new highway or a hospital, and it teams up with a private company to make it happen.
So why do they do this? This table lays out the two biggest reasons. First, governments get to tap into the skills and efficiency of the private sector. But the second one, this one is huge, is off-balance sheet financing. In simple terms, it means the private company takes on the massive debt for the project, not the government. And you can imagine how politically and financially attractive that is. It's a very pragmatic way to build big things.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Now we're going from just managing reality to something a little more calculating. This is where decisions are driven less by big ideas and more by raw power and single make-or-break issues.
Imagine you're up for the biggest job of your life, but the entire high-stakes interview, it all comes down to just one single question. Sounds pretty intense, right? Well, in politics, that's called a litmus test.
A litmus test takes a really complex process, usually a nomination for a powerful judge, and boils it all down to one single all-or-nothing issue. A candidate's answer on one specific hot-button topic can become the only thing that matters, the thing that decides whether they get the job or not. It's the ultimate political shortcut.
But as you can imagine, this whole tactic is highly controversial. Professor Eugene Volokh points out here that it could pressure a judge to stick to what they said in their confirmation hearing instead of just ruling impartially on a case years later. And that raises a really tough question. Does this single-issue focus end up undermining the very idea of a fair justice system?
This brings us to the heavyweight champion of political pragmatism, realpolitik. It's a German word, and it basically means politics based on cold, hard reality and power, not on morals, not on ethics, not on ideology. It's looking at the world like a giant chessboard, where all that matters are the power dynamics.
And the guy who coined the term, Ludwig von Rachau, he put it in a way you just can't forget. He saw power not as just one factor, but as the fundamental force in politics, as real and as undeniable as the law of gravity.
And its legacy is massive. Think of Otto von Bismarck, Germany's first chancellor. He used realpolitik with surgical precision to unify the German states. Fast forward a century, and you have Henry Kissinger bringing the same philosophy to the Nixon White House, which led to that historic opening of relations with communist China, a move that completely ignored ideology in favor of a huge strategic advantage.
But hold on. Power isn't always about force and cold calculations. There's another kind of influence out there, something a lot more subtle. It's the power of attraction.
And that is what we call soft power. It's the polar opposite of hard power, military force or economic threats. Soft power is all about getting other people to want what you want. It's influence that comes from your culture, your political values, and your foreign policy when others see them as legitimate and attractive.
Here's a perfect real-world example of a country trying to wield its soft power. This is the logo for Al Hurra, a US-funded TV channel that broadcasts in Arabic. Instead of using force, the idea here is to inform, to engage, and hopefully to attract an audience by offering a specific perspective through media. It's a clear shot at building influence, not through commands, but through culture and ideas.
And some countries are just absolute masters of this. Think of Italy. It's a cultural superpower thanks to its art, fashion, and food. Or Japan, whose Cool Japan initiative has made things like anime and manga into global phenomenons. And of course, South Korea. The Korean wave has made K-pop and K-dramas a worldwide obsession. All that cultural gravity, it gives them real influence on the world stage.
So we have covered a lot of ground today. We've gone from unwritten rules to pure power calculations and back to the influence of pop culture. Now let's pull all of this together into a practical toolkit that you can actually use.
Here it is, your brand new decoder ring. The next time you're reading the news, start asking these questions. Is this situation about the de jure rule or the de facto reality? Is that new international agreement a permanent solution, or is it just a temporary modus vivendi? Is that nominee facing a political litmus test? Are these leaders playing realpolitik, where power is all that matters, or are they trying to win people over with soft power?
The point is, you now have the language to see past the official story. You can read between the lines and hear the conversations that are happening just out of sight. So the only question left is, with this new language of power at your fingertips, what unspoken truths are you going to uncover?